Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Um, there's Rocky. He's having a rest. This is a rest that he's having after his second breakfast. Yes, he has first and second breakfast every morning, and then he has a series of naps and rest between because he's got to keep himself in good shape, I guess, for the eating or whatever. I don't know. It's the thing he does. It's the procedure he follows. Anyway, yeah, I just noticed, and I found this when I review some of my videos after I post them. I should probably look at all the videos before I post them, really. But the problem is, a lot of the time I'm in a hurry, and I've got a whole bunch of videos to post all at once because I'm trying not to use my data on my phone. So I'm trying to post them whenever I have access to free Wi-Fi, and the result is that I often don't have the time to review every video and make sure that there isn't anything strange in it or whatever. But I just watched a video from yesterday, and I don't know why this is happening to me, but I am having difficulty with my short-term memory. And I notice in some videos I'll make statements that are totally out of context. I'll just throw something in there, and I don't know where it comes from. But anyway, I made a comment in a video yesterday, Cuddling with Rocky, where I was talking. I just it was totally out of context, and I didn't explain it either after I made the statement. So there was nothing leading up to it that would tell you what it is, and there was nothing after that would explain it. So I'm going to explain it now, and hopefully I won't make any more weird comments while I'm explaining it. But anyway, I don't know why this is happening to me. I've noticed this in stores, too. I'll catch myself talking to myself now. I'll just be walking around the store and I'll be thinking, and I won't realize I'm doing it, but I'm thinking out loud, and I'll be talking to myself. I don't know what's going on with me. Maybe I've got some sort of dementia or something. I just don't know. I've wondered about that at times, though. Being used as a guinea pig for drugs when I was a kid did a lot of damage to me in a variety of ways. So possibly, even though I'm only 56, going to be 57 soon, which is fairly young to have dementia, I do wonder sometimes if I'm not experiencing something earlier than I would have otherwise. Anyway, I don't know. I honestly don't know why these things are happening. Maybe it's just because I'm under a lot of stress. That could be it too. I got a lot of stress right now. So that could also be what it is. I just don't know. Anyway, for whatever reason, though, sometimes I'll come out with something and it will make absolutely no sense, and some of you may have noticed that. Anyway, I noticed it with this video yesterday. I made a comment about how I spent a week tearing up papers so they didn't fall into the wrong hands, and how the ladies who filled these papers out would have no idea that they would end up that I would end up with them, Anyway, I should explain that because it sounds weird, and I didn't explain it in the video, and it was totally out of context. Now, the other night, I had somebody asking me about buying storage lockers because I got talking to somebody about that. And I have some experience with that. I used to buy unpaid storage lockers and resell the goods. I made some money doing it. It was a pain in the ass. It was actually way more trouble than it was worth, and I'd be very hesitant to do it again. There are certain circumstances under which I would do it. Like I did bid on one locker recently. That was one situation where I was willing to go to do it. But generally speaking, it's not something I'd want to get back into. Because the storage facilities themselves are oftentimes corrupt, and you got to deal with all kinds of bullshit from those people. And also, the public is horrible. Dealing with the public is just awful. And on top of that, I'm not a salesman by nature, so I don't have the right personality or the right skill set really to be a salesman. And so that's a whole other set of problems. Still, even with all those obstacles, I did make a little money at it. It's just that it wasn't worth it. The amount of money I made wasn't worth all the crap I had to put up with and everything I had to go through to do it. But I'm going to tell you the story anyway of this one locker, and this is connected to the comment I made in the video, which I know made absolutely no sense. If you watched the video, you must have been shaking your head and saying, "What the hell is he talking about?" I would be if I didn't know. But anyway, the other night I was talking to some people, and they were asking me about that. We got talking about these unpaid storage lockers, and they were asking me how it works. And so I was telling them about about how it works. I explained the process to them if you want to buy one, and how it works, how they come to be up for sale, and then how you go about buying one. And I also told them some of the pitfalls, though. Like, if you want to get into this, you should be aware of the following things. That I learned this stuff the hard way. And believe me, I learned some hard lessons doing storage lockers, buying and selling storage lockers. I learned some really hard lessons. One locker that I did buy, though, and again, this is to explain my comment, was in the city of Brockville, where I took you there last week with the St. Lawrence Seaway and the downtown and everything. That was the day my truck broke down on the way home, and I had to abandon it and get it towed to Perth. I told you all that. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I bought this storage locker from a facility in Brockville. I'm even going to tell you the company's name that owned the facility. The company's name was Burnbrae Holdings, and they are a real estate holding company. They own apartment buildings and everything else. And one of the things they own, though, is these storage lockers in Brockville. The company itself is based in the city of Kingston, Ontario. And I'll tell you right now, I'd be very hesitant to buy another storage locker from them because they played a dirty trick on me. It was a damn dirty trick. And things got really ugly between myself and them for a little while because of it. We eventually resolved it. And it got resolved, but they played a dirty trick on me, and I had to go to some extreme lengths to resolve it. And then they didn't like what I did. They were refusing to resolve it until I did what I did, and then they resolved it. But they didn't like it, and then they were trying to bully me into saying that I was the cause of the problem and not them, which wasn't true. They claimed that that the problem wasn't that they locked me out of the facility, so I couldn't collect my goods. They claimed that the problem was that I just didn't understand how their system worked and therefore wasn't able to access the facility. And they wanted me to say that, and they were pretty ugly with me because I wouldn't say it. And what I did instead is I pointed out that on the one day, the first day that I had 3 days to empty the unit, on the first day I came and went from the facility 3 times. If I didn't know how to get into the facility using their keypad system with an access number, with an access code that was assigned to me so I could do my job, how is it that I entered that facility 3 times on the first day, but then the access code quit working after that? How is it that I was able to enter that facility 3 times on the first day? If I didn't know how it worked. Now, I acknowledge there is a problem. Obviously, there's an issue with me. I don't know what it is. But even so, I proved that I understood how to access the facility by accessing the facility 3 times. I had the woman bring it up on her computer when she was trying to tell me that I didn't know how to access the facility and that's why I got locked out of it. I said, do you have records? Do you keep track of who comes and goes, who accesses the facility and when? She said, yes, we do. I said, bring those records up on your computer. So she did. And I said, how many times did I access the facility and on what days did I access it? She says, you accessed the facility 3 times, and it was on the Friday, the first day of the free days that you had to clear your unit. I said, okay. How did I access the facility 3 times on the first day if I didn't understand how to access the facility? Well, that made her pretty ugly because she knew I was right, you know. But anyway, like I say, I would be very hesitant to buy anything from these people again. But the locker I bought was a pretty good locker because it was full of collectibles. The caretaker, when he opened up the locker to give me access to it, because they put their lock on it. When they seize a locker, what they do is if you don't pay your rent, I'll just explain it briefly. If you don't pay your rent on your storage unit, they can't take your storage unit away from you because you're a week or a month late on rent. They can't do that. They have to try to contact you several times, and there's a process they have to go through. They have to be able to prove that they tried to contact you. If they can't contact you and you haven't come around to make any arrangements to clear the unit or to pay your rent, then what happens is they eventually will have a right to seize your goods. They can basically terminate your lease for non-payment. They can actually cut your padlock off that unit. They can put their own padlock on the unit, and they can put the unit up for sale. And then a guy like me will come and bid on it. Now, I was bidding on it on a website. And what I actually did is when the company that held the unit locked me out, that sold me the unit locked me out and then would not communicate with me and tried to keep my damage deposit and tried to keep, because there's a cleaning deposit, I had to pay a $200 cash cleaning deposit on top of what I paid for the locker. But that was refundable to me when I showed them that I'd cleared the unit. They tried to keep that, and they tried to keep the goods in the unit because there was a lot of valuable stuff in the unit. It was full of collectible goods. Anyway, when that happened, I went to the public forum on the Bid 13 site where I had bought the locker, and I told the whole story. And at that point, Bid 13 raised hell with the facility and threatened that they were going to ban them from selling any more stuff through their website unless they resolved the situation with me. And that's how I got it resolved. But anyway, this locker was a good locker. I did well with it. Even not being a good salesman and stuff, I still made money with it. However, it was also a pain in the ass, not only because of the dirty trick that Burnbrae Holdings attempted to pull on me, and did pull on me to a degree because they caused me a lot of stress and a lot of trouble by doing what they did, but it gets better. The locker was actually owned by a married couple, who were at that time at least serving a prison sentence, both of them were, for human trafficking. And these people owned an adult-themed store in Brockville, a store where you could buy pornography and adult toys and so on. And they were running the human trafficking operation out of the store. The store was a front for the human trafficking operation. Anyway, so along with the collectibles and all the rest of it, I also got a bunch of pornography, a bunch of catalogs from adult companies with graphic pictures on them of people using the products, you know, and doing things with each other as well. You know, just people loving each other, I guess you could say, with the aid of toys. You know, people playing with their toys. Anyway, there was that, and also a bunch of toys. Yeah, a bunch of them. In fact, this is kind of a comical story. There was a bunch of loose dildos And then you don't know what a dildo is. I'm not going to explain it to you. If you don't know, Google it and you'll see. Anyway, I ended up with a great big black garbage bag full of dildos, which I had to put out on garbage day in front of my house. I was not, yeah, I'll tell you, I just kept hoping that bag didn't bust open when they threw it in the truck, because I can only imagine the gossip that would have, just the rumors that would have started had that happened in front of the bag in front of my house full of those things. Anyway, this couple, though, that had this business and the human trafficking business too, they also did home parties. And what these home parties are is you have a product similar to a Tupperware party, but it's for adult toys. So basically, as a representative of the company, they would go into your home and they would bring samples of the products to show the people. You go to the party. I don't know, I guess they have refreshments and so on. But you go to the party and you have your refreshments, and I don't know, I would imagine it's kind of an awkward thing. It's not something I'd want to go to. For me, it'd be very socially awkward, but still, it's mostly women who go to these things. Maybe it's a good place to meet a woman. I don't know. You gotta figure she's probably a little lonely if she's going if she's buying stuff at one of these things. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, though, so they show the products, they talk about them and so on, show them. You get they pass the thing around. I guess you can handle it if you want to or whatever. Decide if this is the right one for you. Is this the right fit, so to speak? Anyway, if you like what you see, you can order the products. We can order whatever you want, that they've put on display there. So then you fill out a form. And on the form, you put your name, your address, your phone number, all your credit card information, because you got to pay for this stuff, your banking credit card information. And of course, there's a list there. You write down, okay, I want the 8-inch long super deluxe, real feel, whatever type thing. That's what I want. So you write that all down. Stock number such and such, whatever with the description. You write all that down. You sign the form. You hand it in. They place your order for you, and then you can come and pick up your order whenever it comes in. That's how it works. Just like a Tupperware party, sort of, but for adult toys and novelties. Anyway, part of what I got when I bought this unit, on top of all the dildos and all the rest of it, cases of lube, cases of it, on top of all that, I got a bunch of collectibles, but I also got a bunch of paperwork. I got a filing cabinet, a 4 or 5 drawer filing cabinet full of paperwork. And part of that was a bunch of stacks and stacks. There was actually a box in the drawer full of order forms from these parties. Now, as I just said, these forms have all your information on them. So if you go to these parties, be aware, these stores, at least that store, they kept that information. They didn't dispose of those forms after the orders had been filled. Now, these obviously weren't the most ethical people. They were doing human trafficking, so they weren't exactly ethical. But they kept all those forms. And then because they went to prison and they lost the storage unit, I come in and I bought it, just a random guy. So now I had access to all that information. So if you went to one of those parties, I could know your name, your address, your telephone number, all your banking information, credit card information, and all the products you had ordered at that party. So I would know that you had ordered this or that or the other thing, all of a very intimate nature. All products, intimate products, that, you probably wouldn't want just anybody knowing that you had ordered that stuff. And plus, of course, your banking information is compromised and everything else. Anyway, I was telling these people I was talking to about that experience, and I was saying this is part of what you can end up having to deal with when you buy these units. There could be any number of things in there, and this is part of what you will have to deal with, you know. Anyway, I spent a week tearing those forms up into tiny pieces to dispose of them because I didn't want to put them in my recycling box as a whole form. Because there were people would walk past the house on the road and everything. I didn't want somebody grabbing up a handful of those out of my recycling box and using them to commit credit card fraud, using the information to clone credit cards and to do that, compromising people's banking and credit information. I also didn't want some pervert getting a hold of them because they had addresses and telephone numbers and everything else on them. So I didn't want these women to be getting weird calls from strange men, saying, hey, I hear you like the 8-inch, whatever, I didn't want that either. And so, for ethical reasons, and I didn't have to do it, I was perfectly within my rights just to throw the forms out there by the road and not to care. But I couldn't bring myself to do that. For ethical reasons, I felt that I needed to destroy all these forms. So I spent a solid week sitting in front of my television in my spare time. I was also working. I was working pretty much full time at the time for an auctioneer. And so I didn't have a lot of spare time, but at night after work, after I had my supper, I'd be sitting in front of the television, tearing these forms into strips and throwing them away, throwing them into a big black garbage bag, because I didn't want that information to be out there and available to just anyone. All this personal financial information and also information about what these people had ordered and stuff, because I figured all it will take is for a con artist or a pervert to grab up a handful of those out of my recycling box, and there's going to be a whole bunch of weird stuff start happening, and I don't want to be the one who put it out there for that to happen. Anyway, that's where the comment came from, and it must have been that I had it on my mind. I must have been kind of sort of thinking about the conversation I had with those people the night before, where I was talking to them a bit about storage units and about the good, the bad, and the ugly of buying these things. And trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of everything. When you get into some of these things and you've got to deal with somebody's dirty, disgusting, soiled mattress, which I've had to do, when you get into these things, it's amazing the stuff people will pack away. People will throw their garbage into a storage unit. People will actually pack up the garbage and throw it into the storage. I've seen unwashed dishes boxed up and growing mold in the storage unit. This is the shit you get into. And then you get into all the other stuff too. I've seen, I found drug paraphernalia. Thank goodness I've never found a firearm, because in Canada that would be a nightmare. Especially for a guy like me, because I'm not allowed to own firearms. I can't, if I apply legally to own a firearm, I can't get one because I'm considered to be a criminal, and I'm even on a federal government watch list. I'm considered a terrorist by the government of Canada. So I can't even legally, there's no circumstance under which I can legally own a firearm. And if I were to call the police and say, hey, I bought this storage unit and there's a firearm in it, they'd come down there and arrest me for being in possession of it. So it would be a friggin' nightmare for me, is what it would be, if I ever found a firearm in a storage unit. I see some of the Americans who buy and sell storage units, and they get all excited if they find a gun, and they're saying, oh, I hope I find a gun, Not me. I'll tell you, the last thing I need is to find a gun in a storage unit. And that always went through my mind. What am I going to do? What's my plan for if I find a firearm in this unit? Because I can't call the police. They'll take me to jail if I call them, because I am in possession of it. Even though I didn't intend to be, I am. and they will take me to jail for that in this country. So I can't call the police, but I got to dispose of it. What am I going to do with it? So anyway, lucky for me, I never had to deal with that, but it was always on my mind when I bought these units. I did find drug paraphernalia, which I just disposed of. This is another thing too now with fentanyl and whatnot. Just getting a little bit on your hands can go right through your skin into your system, and it can do a number on you. It can even kill you. And there's so much of that these days. So when you're handling this stuff, even, you don't know what you're getting into. It can be quite dangerous. Anyway, bottom line is there are rewards to it, though. It isn't all bad. But this is what I was talking to the people about anyway, all the potential pitfalls plus all the good of it too, because there is good. It's interesting. It's a real treasure hunt. You get in there, you don't know what you're going to find. And that's kind of neat, and it's kind of interesting, and I enjoy that, even though I know I may find something I wish I hadn't found. I was watching a YouTube video one time where these people bought this unit, and when they opened it up, there was an awful stench in there. And it turned out somebody had put a terrarium in there with a big snake in it. The snake was probably alive when they stored him in there, but of course the snake died in there because it wasn't being looked after, it wasn't being fed or anything. And so they found a terrarium with a dead snake in it. A huge dead snake, like an exotic snake. Now, I've been fortunate. I've never found anything like that. But still, like I say, that's a possibility, something like that. You just never know. These facilities, some of them will toss the locker before they put it up for sale. So if there's any cash in it or anything of any real value, they'll take it before they put it up for sale. They're not supposed to do that, but they do. Some of these facilities will play dirty tricks, like the facility in Brockville played on me, where they'll lock you out before you're able to finish clearing the unit. And they'll try to keep your stuff. The caretaker, when he opened up that unit, his eyes got big like saucers. And he said, "Oh my God, this is a good unit." That should have been a clue to me right there that they were going to pull something. Anyway, it was a good unit. There was a lot of money in it. There was also a lot of crap in it that had to be dealt with, which I did. If I had been a better salesman, I probably could have made a lot more money out of that unit than I did. But as it stands, I made a pretty good profit out of it. You don't always do that with these things. It's a gamble. But in that particular case, I did make a good profit, even with my limited salesmanship abilities. But like I say, I also had to deal with a lot of crazy stuff between the trouble with the facility and some of the stuff I found in the unit, Yeah, anyway, that's it, but that's an explanation. If you watched the video from yesterday morning of Rocky and I cuddling, and you wondered what I was talking about when I was talking about tearing up this paperwork, that's what I was talking about. Like I say, the only thing I can think of is I must have still been thinking of the conversation I had with the people the night before, where I was telling them these stories about my own experiences buying storage units. The other thing that happened was, because I was working for an auctioneer, there was a potential for a conflict of interest. So I actually went to my boss and his wife, and I got permission to buy storage units before I started doing it. And they both gave me permission to do so. But then once I bought a storage unit, when they saw that storage unit was a really good unit, and when they saw the stuff I had, because they started seeing I was posting stuff online, when they saw that, they got really mad, and they were threatening to fire me and everything else. So I had all that to deal with at the same time as I'm fighting with the storage unit people. And in fact, I remember the woman on the phone was quite ignorant with me, because she wanted me to say that I just didn't understand how the system worked, because she was mad at me because I'd gone to bid 13 and basically did an end run over their heads in order to force a resolution to the situation. And she didn't like that. But it did reestablish communication, but then it was hostile communication. Anyway, she wanted me to say I didn't understand the system, which was clearly not the case. And I remember at one point I told her, I said, look, I can't be dealing with all this crap right now. I just want to get this resolved. I said, I've got trouble at work because I bought these units. That's not your fault, but I do have trouble at work because of it. So I'm under that stress. And now I'm under stress dealing with you. And I've done nothing wrong. I said, I've done everything above board and by the book. I've gone out of my way. I've bent over backwards to be ethical in my dealings with you and in my dealings with my employer and everything else. And yet I've got it coming at me from all sides now. And I told her that. And I said, I'm just about done. So I said, we need to resolve this. We need to resolve it now, you know. Anyway, it did get resolved, but like I say, there was a lot of stress connected to it. And yeah, it was pretty tough. But anyway, these are just some of the things that you deal with. And I was explaining that to the people, that this is how it is. I think what happened in the case of my employer is they didn't think that I knew how to profile a unit properly. And so they thought I was going to get a bad unit. And they figured, oh, we'll just let him do it, and then he'll find out. You get a bad unit, and that'll cure him. It's rather than us telling him he can't do it, we'll let him do it. He'll get burned, and that'll cure him. And when I didn't get burned, it pissed them off. That's what happened, basically. It made them mad. And, but like I say, I did do everything above board. Where my employer was concerned, I recognized there was a potential conflict of interest. And so I did get their permission to buy these units. Anyway, before I did it. Anyway, that's it. That's the explanation about the comment I made that was completely off the wall, and you must have really been wondering if you saw the video, what the heck's he talking about? I just reviewed the video a little while ago, and I realized that was completely off the wall. I've noticed I've been doing that lately. Obviously, there's an issue. I don't know what it is. And I can't really go to doctors. I'm kind of blacklisted now with doctors, too. Anybody connected with the government or doctors, which actually in Canada, doctors are basically government employees, too. I'm pretty much blacklisted from all of that. So, anyway, yeah. It's a funny thing in Canada. If you get cancer, they'll put you on a 4-year waiting list for treatment so that you can die 2.5 years from now, where you're still on the list. But if you want them to help you kill yourself, you wait 90 days. It shows where their priorities are at. They'd sooner kill you than save you. That's our system here. Anyway, just saying that can probably get me into a lot of trouble, but it's the truth, so I'm going to say it. Anyway, bottom line is I can't be going to doctors. That doctors don't want to deal with me, and I don't want to deal with them at this point either. But yeah, I have noticed that there is something. I don't know what it is, but there is something. All right, that's it. We'll talk to you later. I hope that explains anyway the weirdness in the video from yesterday. I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.